So Anatoly, when was the last time you were thinking about how many things you can do with just your phone?
Actually, quite recently I was stopped by traffic police and I was able to manage everything with just a phone in my hand. And that was the time I thought, like, the future is now.
Oh really? I actually have to admit that a lot of new products appear in market every day, and I'm thinking that still the potential is not fully opened, and we haven't reached our plateau here.
I totally agree. I was following Apple presentations, one of which will happen later today, by the way, and every time I'm amazed how little by little they are changing the world.
I mean, in terms of Apple, it's actually easy to them, right? I mean, they have already
Yeah.
established markets, so they can just introduce whatever they want and users will buy it. I mean, while our today's guest was able to make a change to the market even against their customers' opinion by just sticking to his vision. So please guys, welcome our today's guest, CEO of Sarafu and AzamPay, Firas Ahmad. Hi Firas.
How you doing?
Hey guys, hey Max, hey Anatoly, how are you guys doing?
Doing great.
Great.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me on. Very happy to be here.
So dive into the start of our podcast. I mean, just and finish it about Apple. In 2014, Apple actually introduced their Apple Pay. So they made it an underlying market because they released Apple Pay after 3 years after Google launched the Google Wallet, and it was easier for them, so they knew where should they move. Like how it was you? What was the market setup when you decided to launch Sarafu?
Yeah, so I think it's very different markets between Apple and what we're doing with Sarafu, but I guess innovation is always somewhat similar. When we decided to launch Sarafu, really what we were looking at is a lot of inefficiencies and lack of transparency in the market. So Sarafu is a B2B e-commerce app that's based in Tanzania. At least we're operating primarily in Dar es Salaam, the main city in Tanzania. And in markets like this, in sub-Saharan Africa, you see a lot of informal economic activity where people are exchanging goods and transacting by cash. And so that results in a lot of inefficiency and a lot of lack of transparency. And so we saw an opportunity to digitize payments for a big subset of relatively ignored small businesses, and in doing so create some value for them and also create an interesting business. So that's how we got started.
So it wasn't much similar products kind of yours when you decided to launch Sarafu, and what maybe help you to identify and to clarify the concept?
Yeah. So how we verified the concept, I can give you a quick, a quick use case. Customers that we're currently serving on Sarafu, which is the e-commerce app. Previously, what they would do is they would, if they needed to procure supplies. These are shops that might be selling, your everyday goods like soda, juice, or water, or things like that. And when they would get their supplies, they would be calling a distributor, and that distributor would be calling on a phone. They'd try to get a price quote from them on the phone. They'd ask about inventory. Then the delivery process would be, when are you going to come by? If they didn't come by, they'd have to call them back on the phone. They might be on the way. They might be stuck in traffic. They might say I'm around the corner. So, or other times they might simply have to shut down their shop and go to the marketplace and go get whatever supplies they need. So it was a cumbersome process. So what we saw was an opportunity to create a digital version of that ordering process that gave a lot more power to the small shop owner to purchase those supplies on a phone. And then what we did is we aggregated all those supplies in a warehouse and we delivered them to the shop owner at his doorstep. So basically what we did is we did all the work, and in exchange we became kind of this larger wholesale distributor. But ultimately for us, the core of it was on the payment side, because most payments in this part of the world still happen in cash. And when you have cash payments, there's a lot of opportunity for problems to come into the equation. And by making the payment process digital, what we did was eliminate a lot of those hassles that people were experiencing.
I think we obviously know that it's hard launching a new brand and having no users at it. So what was the process for you of getting your users and how you made them to trust you?
Yeah, the first so obviously people behavior change is very difficult to do in markets, and human beings are creatures of habit. So if you go to a classroom every day, 10 days in a row, most likely you'll end up sitting in the same chair for most of those 10 days. So people like to have their habits. Now people were habituated into paying with cash on delivery, and what we had to do is change that perception. So one of the things that happened was when we came with the idea originally to these customers, almost all of them didn't want to order on an app. Many of them didn't have smartphones, and the ones that did have smartphones, they didn't know how to use the smartphone. So they might have used a smartphone as almost like basically for WhatsApp calls, but outside of that, they didn't really use a smartphone. So there was a lot of resistance. And so what they wanted instead was to have us open a call center and have people place calls on a phone. We send them the products and then they pay cash on delivery, essentially replicating exactly what they have been doing all this time, except we might be giving them a little bit better price. So what we did is we decided to totally ignore what they were asking for. We did the exact opposite of what they wanted, which is we forced them in order to get the benefits that we had created otherwise. So we had good pricing, we had on-time delivery, we had all these benefits that were not associated with using the app per se. But we said, in order to get those benefits, you must use the app. You must place the order on the app. And what happened was, instead of spending all this money on a call center to take calls and orders, we ended up spending a little bit of money on a sales team to go and train people how to use the app. So they went into the market, they said, this is how you order. If you want to get this price, if you want to get this type of service, you have to go and download this app, and this is how you use it. And so over time, actually, initially, the uptake wasn't even there, because what would happen is the customer would say, okay, fine, I'll do it. And they did it with the sales agent. And then the next day they need to place another order. They'd call the sales agent and say, hey, log into my account and place this order for me. And the sales agents would do it, right? Even though we would kind of tell them not to do it, they would still do it, because that's just, that's what they were doing. So there was that much resistance, right? Even after being trained, they'd still rather have someone place the order for them. And then what happened over time is they started to get more comfortable with it, and they started to realize that, there are other things I can do with this app that I couldn't do otherwise. So one of the things that they did was they started placing orders at night, because normally all these shops would place orders between, say, 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. when typical business hours. And that's when you can get someone on the phone, right? But now all of a sudden they have this application on their phone, and it's 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, and we start to see all these orders start coming in at these later hours. And that's because the customer stopped trying to do what it is they wanted to do and started to realize that, hey, there's a new world here. This thing can work when there's nobody on the other side, and I can place my order, and then they got it the first thing in the morning the next day, which is actually what they wanted, right? They want their products at the beginning of the day when the customers are starting to come in. So what we saw was a shift in behavior from a total resistance to using the app and forcing the sales agents to place the orders, to a situation where now they were starting to use the benefits of the app and started to understand that, hey, this technology can actually do something for me that I didn't realize. So really what it was about for us was, we knew that once they experienced the potential of the technology, they would like it. But the resistance was just experiencing it. So we put them in a situation where they experienced it for themselves, and then we started to see, the customers starting to change their behavior, and they started to, and now we don't get any calls from the sales agents, right? They don't call sales agents. In fact, now new customers buy smartphones to use our service, right? And on top of that, our sales agents don't have to place those orders for them anymore. So it took about 8 to 12 months really to start to see that shift happen. But now I would say half our orders are placed after 8 p.m. at night, as opposed to 90% of them being placed between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. before. So a new world of possibilities.
Were you expecting that user behavior will change in that way, or maybe there was something that just surprised you?
So I think this is what it comes down to, between balancing the customer's needs or what they want and your vision for what you think you can do. And interestingly enough, I was just reading the other day, Jeff Bezos, he writes a letter to shareholders every year, and every year I think, I haven't read very many of them, I read a couple of them, but I know he keeps repeating this. Nobody actually asked him for Amazon Prime. No customer came to him and said, hey, it would be great if you did 2-day free delivery, you packaged Amazon Video with it, you gave me for $90 a year, $110 a year, whatever it is. Nobody asked him, right? He did it, right? And actually Amazon Prime has fundamentally changed retail in America, probably in the world, right? Because now the expectation is when you order something online, you're gonna get it within 2 days, okay? So nobody asked him for Amazon Prime. He did it, and now it's perhaps the biggest fundamental shift in retail consumer purchases in America in maybe in the last 30 years. So it's the same situation for us, right? Nobody asked us, nobody came to us and said, it would be really great if we could order these products on a smartphone. But we knew where we wanted to head. We had a vision, right? We want to transform that informal marketplace, but we also want to create a more broader digital marketplace that other companies can plug into as well. And we knew that that would not be possible with a call center as the core of our sales engine, right? We knew it had to be done digitally. And so in order for it to be done digitally, we had to basically push the idea out and get the customers to start buying in. And you have to use different incentives and make sure people are getting, ultimately their need is products, right? As long as they were getting products at the price they want, at the time they want, then we were solving that problem. And then we realized that other things would start to gel after that.
Okay, and you have this product running for over 2 years now. What is the process of adding new features to the product, to the software right now? Do you do customer interviews? Do you collect data?
Yeah, so we do. We do canvas customers. We do look at some of the other features that might be helpful for them. Like one feature that I know we're looking at building in is selecting time of day for delivery. So if they're typically in their shops at one time versus another time, then each customer could create that preference, and we could then use the logistics algorithms to optimize the delivery time. So I think some of those incremental changes, absolutely, you need to listen to what your customers need. Another function that we added recently was a credit feature, so that they could buy certain products on supplier credit. And if you use the app enough, we have enough history on you to make sure that that's something that we can do. So these features, I think you add those incremental ones. I think the kind of seismic shift changes, those need to be vision-based. So it's a balance between the two. I think Clayton Christian had that book, The Innovator's Dilemma, right, in which he talked about the disruptive changes versus the incremental changes. And typically most companies are good at incremental changes and not that great at disruptive ones, because the skill sets for one are not the same as the skill sets for the other. So I think as someone who's in charge of product management or someone who's guiding the company, it's really important to know the distinction between those two types of changes, and when you need to stick to your vision and when you need to really get feedback from your customer.
As far as I understand, the first initial questioning the people what they want was completely opposite from what was your vision. So how to find a balance between the vision and the data? Because if you were purely relying on people's opinion, you wouldn't be able to reach the product.
Yeah, good question. And I think this comes back to having a balance between, first of all, you need to understand your vision, where you need to go, right? So what do you want to show your customers that's different than what they already do? What is differentiating you in the market? I think you have to answer those questions for yourself. And then you need to map out, you need to look and see where it is that your company is headed. And if you are making changes based on what the customer is saying that doesn't put you in the direction of where you're headed, then you're making a mistake, right? So I think you don't ever compromise on your vision in terms of where you think you can make the biggest impact and the biggest change for your customers. And where those requests align with that vision is where I think you can really start to look at, okay, these are features that we can look at adding and building out.
And do you think vision could be adjusted over the time, or you should stick to your initial idea?
Mission and vision, it's sometimes hard to tell this distinction, but I think your mission should always stay the same. I think your vision can change based on circumstance. You know, it's there's so many instances in history where companies. I think you know, United Airlines started as a cargo carrier and turned into a people carrier. You know, I think FedEx expanded well beyond what its initial thoughts were. So I think you should never limit yourself. So there's always, as opportunities come, take advantage. But at the same time, you know, for us, at least in the market that we're operating, for me, the vision is clear, right? We know that these emerging market countries will end up looking like something in the future. So for us, it's a question of bridging that gap. How are we going to participate in bridging the gap between where things will be in the future? Because everywhere in the world, it's heading towards that, right? And so you know that these countries will go there. How are you going to play a role in that? That's where, for us, that's the interesting thing.
Mm-hmm. And your idea is that vision should be reviewed eventually based on the environment circumstances, or you think there should be some period of time when you still have to get back and review your vision?
Yeah, I think you're always reviewing. I mean, I think technology changes vision, really. Okay, so for example, like in a place like Africa, let's say all of a sudden cryptocurrency becomes widely adopted in a place like Africa. Who knows? Most unlikely because of the regulatory requirements, but let's say it happens. Well, that doesn't mean I stick with the way I'm running my payments, right, the way they are now. I definitely have to adjust, and maybe cryptocurrency creates a series of opportunities that I didn't see before or were not available before. So I think technology absolutely can adjust your vision, and I think this is why anybody who's in a leadership position in terms of either product or a company, a startup, especially in the technology space, needs to just be constantly consuming information around the world, like where are things headed, what's the new thing, you know, who's doing what, and where's the money going, and then adjust accordingly. Or else, you know, things move very quickly these days, even in these emerging market countries where it's sometimes very difficult to implement stuff. Things can change very quickly.
And you mentioned cryptocurrencies, and it gets me to my next question. How detailed do you think the vision should be? Because we may say like person have to be able to pay online without cash transaction, and that already involves on all credit card payments as well as cryptocurrency payments. But should your vision include those cryptocurrency things right away or not? Or it has to be like more abstract?
I would say the payment method or the payment mode is more like a tactic. I would say the vision for me, like if I look at what we're doing with our companies, AzamPay and Sarafu, I would say creating digital commerce experiences where they previously were analog is kind of our vision. And how that happens, whether it be through crypto, whether it be through credit, or whether it be through mobile money. I mean, mobile money is way more higher adoption in this part of the world. So that's more of the tactic. And then, you know, like I'll give you an example of a kind of the way the vision would inform your thinking. So instead of credit cards, which you typically use in, say, Europe and US, in sub-Saharan Africa, use mobile money. Essentially use your mobile phones to make payments, and your money actually sits on the phone in a way. It's in a bank account, but it's in a trust account that's associated with your phone. Okay, so and it's been very successful, right? So M-Pesa, if you've heard of M-Pesa, it's one of the most successful mobile money companies in the world, and it's expanded. In Kenya, it's got a monopoly position. It's got presence all over East Africa. Where I see mobile money primarily focusing is on transactions. So they're moving money from one place to another. So you need to send money to your mother. You need to pay for something, like a bill payment or something, electricity, stuff like that. That's where it's being used. Where it's not being used is in facilitating trust between buyer and seller. Okay, so if you look at a credit card, for example, I can use a credit card on a website. And if that website, say, commits some sort of fraud, or they don't send me the product that they promised me, I can go to the credit card company and I can say, hey, I bought this with your credit card. You have to go resolve this issue. I'm not paying that money. And the credit card company is happy to manage fraud because that's part of their business. But in mobile money, actually, there's none of that infrastructure. Okay, it's basically you send the money, it moves in one direction, and once it gets there, it's very difficult to come back. Even reversals is a little bit difficult. So for me, the vision would be, how do you adjust that infrastructure to facilitate commerce? So for example, if I want to rent a car, okay, I can rent a car with a credit card because it has a credit score on me, and it has a, it can go recover the funds if I damage the car, et cetera, et cetera. But with a mobile money account, I cannot rent a credit card because I would need the full amount of that car to cover the risk of that. I could simply just steal the car, right? And there's no way to track me down. So this is where I'm saying the vision is facilitate commerce, and then the tactic would be, well, how do you modify the payment network so that it does account for this risk, so that it does cover the concerns of the merchant in a way where they can use digital to then address that transaction. So that's where I see this balance coming in is, like you said, a broader vision, and then what are the tactics and how do you make those facilitate that broader vision?
So we can say that technologies are just the tools to easily implement our vision.
You hit the nail on the head there, Max.
All right. And probably any last questions from me. What would you recommend to read our listeners in order to manage their vision and in order to find the balance between the vision and the data?
Yeah, actually, I mentioned this book earlier in the talk. There's a book called The Innovator's Dilemma. That's one of the classic ones. It was written by a Harvard Business School professor. I think if you're looking at going into a innovative space that could potentially be disruptive or potentially be a kind of order magnitude change over what other people are doing, it's absolutely a really helpful book to organize your thoughts. And in more specific, even that last chapter where it summarizes all the issues, like why do companies fail? Why do they not innovate even though they're trying to, and things like that. So it's both for companies that are startups, but as well as someone might be working in a bigger business, trying to understand what they need to do to innovate. The other book, so we in our company, we do read books every now and then to keep our senior team kind of thinking. One is there's a book that we're reading right now on Amazon. That's basically a history of Amazon.com, and we're in e-commerce too, so that's a helpful one for me. But those are two that I would definitely recommend to check out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, fascinating recommendation. So I think it can be it for today, guys. I just have to mention that today we discussed a fascinating case about Sarafu.
Mm-hmm.
Today we had Firas, who actually made a fantastic job about digitalization in the market and teaching people how to use smartphone and how to make smartphone a better tool to make your life easier and smoother.
Too kind, Max. You're too kind.
Thank you for joining us today, Firas.
Totally. Thanks, Max. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys for your excellent questions and your time. I had a fun time with you.